Do you have polymer clay scraps? I bet you do if you make things with polymer clay. And the scraps can be so rewarding and fun to play with. In this video, the second out of 11, I will look at and show how I make a false Faux Mokume Gane stack, a square, and show what I make out of it. It's a Japanese metal technique where they layer different metals on top of each other and hammer to make them bond and go into each other. And we are trying, but this is possible to mimic with polymer clay. Making sheets of your scrap clay. On my table I had many different scraps, and I sorted them in color piles and blended them. So this made all these colors. Yeah. Even the white is from leftovers. To get the effect, the Mokume Gane effect, where the layers go into each other. With polymer clay this is fairly easy and a silent thing, as we just poke and press the clay so the one color go into the other. And then it's very important to have colors that are not so very similar, but play nicely together. There are several ways of doing Mokume Gane with polymer clay, and this is how I choose to do it now, with quite thick layers of clay. I want the colors not to blend very much, but to leave waves inside, and you'll see when I cut it open. If you use thin layers of clay, you get a different result, and there's other ways to do it also. Just search a lot of nice videos on YouTube. This is what happens when I cut the stack right down to look what's inside. I want to cut it like that. Regular Mokume Gane, the most usual way is to shave from the top, so you get small circles and uneven circles revealing the pattern inside. But this is what I wanted for this time. It's a Mokume Gane stack that I just stopped manipulating earlier and cut in a different way than usual. What you do, I recommend search on YouTube. One way to do it can fit for one project, and it's always fun to see those who are very have done it for a very long time, and they make things with it also, so you can watch and get inspired for what you can do. This is how I choose to do it now. The clay I just lay down on the raw clay, and later I will make a sheet of clay out of this, a new sheet of clay with the pattern from the Mokume Gane. And then I need to make the gaps go away, and I did cut them quite thick, just with that in mind, because when I do this, the clay moves on the paper, and the pressure get the clay to move closer to each other, and the holes start to vanish. Depending on what you want to use the sheet of clay for, you may or may not want to get all the gaps again. When you use paper to squish clay like that, you can see oil coming up onto the paper. That's why we do not want to store clay in paper. Remember to remove the clay you work on from the table, lift it up, because it will stick, and if you don't lift it, it will just squish and become mush, because you cannot move it. It's stuck to the table. So if you want something to do something like that, you have to lift it up between while you work, and pay attention to the paper you use, as if it's a print, it can go onto the clay. See, I got a little bit of holes left, and I try to not stroke over it, just wriggle to close them. But I think I got a fair idea of what I want to use it for, so I don't mind. I'll just work around those gaps. It's not always important to have perfections and everything. You can go back after and do things and close them. This did not want to close without me using very much force, and I don't want the other parts to be mush. So I leave it for now. I know there are 3 or 4 small holes there, but that's okay. Cutting off the edges just to see what I have to work with, and so I can fit it into the pasta machine. The pasta machine will deform it a bit, but it do not close the gaps, as it pressed the clay evenly. So holes you have to do without the pasta machine. You have to do like I did. I want to cut strips out of this, and I don't think that is so easy to get the even strips. So I made myself a little tool out of a craft tool. I took some knives, or the small bits. It's a craft knife, and I broke off some of the blade and added it into clay, raw clay. I measured so I got the gap between them will make a nice ribbon. And then I cured it in the oven. It do not look pretty, but it makes wonderful. The making of strips, thin strips, very easy. There's many tools you can make yourself instead of buying them. And many of the tools you make yourself, they are customized to you and what you need them for. So, and this is one ribbon clay cutter by myself. Only thing is, for this, where I want long even strips, I think it's quite difficult to not get new scraps. It's to position it so it fits perfectly, but I just had it with me to show you. You can make this tool. Maybe you do not want the strip to be so narrow, but it's easy to make. Mind your fingers. Be careful when you do it, and use the blade from a craft knife. I showed you. Stanley, I think one name for a craft knife. A cheap one will do, or only the blades. You do not need a whole knife. You can get placement blades very cheap in any hardware store where they sell wood and yeah. Chose to go by using the knife and a metal ruler. That's one of the things I would recommend you get your hands on. Something in metal, not plastic. Plastic will look disgusting after just a short while and give you very much work because you have to clean it and clean it and clean it. Even the acrylic one, I prefer a cheap ruler, metal ruler. Easy to clean and can be used for very many things. And just place the ribbons next to each other. If this had been a striped sheet of clay, then you will get Bargello effect. It's a very nice pattern, and there are many videos that show it, and maybe you should look it up. It's very pretty. But here I just wanted the pattern be a bit asymmetrical, so it did not resemble anything. Should not look like a circle or square. It just randomly, obviously randomly, and making sure that the strips are close to each other, so I do not have to squish them. When you squish, you have to press the clay when you put the pattern on it. The pattern will change. Sometimes you want it to do it, but for this, you see, when I make those tiny ribbons, thin ribbons, the pattern I had on the clay sheet changes. When it was large and standalone, it looks a bit almost damaged, squished. But when you get small strips like this, then even the sheet that probably would have just been a filler or ended inside a bead can be used for something because of this technique borrowed from the Bargello. I can put links under this video where two good, at least two starter videos for Bargello sheet technique. Now I just fill this clay, the clay strips on this scrap. It's a win-win. I get to use most of my scraps and use a scrap clay piece under it, so I get to use even more scraps. You can spend as much or little time on this as you want, with depending on what project you want to use it for. Then you can have the strips wider, and then this will go faster. I think this is not fast forward, so the time it took me to make this is the time you have seen. So it's not a super long project. When it's a little bit messy like this one. If you want it very perfection, then you will probably use a little bit more time positioning the strips, so there will be no gaps at all. So but it is a nice way of using up both scraps, and if you want, you can use good clay also per colors you have. Now it's almost finished. I just use a knitting needle to make it flat. You can use what you have, acrylic rod or knitting needle, I don't know. It's all nice. Get it flat. And with this I did not use the pasta machine because I didn't want the clay to stay in straight lines, because that's what I need for the next thing I'm going to make out of this. It's no use making stuff just to no. This is the strips. Look how they changes when they get alone, like a quilt or I don't know. Things. Yeah, I'm satisfied. I think this will turn out nicely, and now I just have to get them out of the workplace, so make sure that they stick together, and then I can continue with my project, what I have in mind. I will keep the scraps made, use it for something else. I want to make a kind of mosaic, a lot of squares next to each other. And for that I need one color that is solid, and then the strips I made. And I just use one strip to get the same size. I could have used measured and used a ruler, but it's not important that it is super accurate for this, so I don't mind if they tiny bit different, as long as they are straight and they look like they are approx the same. Now to layer out one black and one with the pattern. It counts down the pattern. The pattern is quite messy, even if it's built up of, but to me it looks a bit messy. And the black strips calm it down and making more. It stretches the colors. Black and white often you can find in big packs, so they're often cheaper. Colors are cost more. No. Okay. I'm quite happy with this. What do you think? I'm still not using my hand. And this time I made sure that the cat did not touch the clay. I do not know if you noticed that when I made a long sheet, that part of the marker made a mark. Make sure the sheet you use has no print on it. This is, now I'm almost done with this video. Just want to show you what I'm going to do with this. Taking one row across and adding the next row So the black is on the colored part, making a chest pattern. You can do all things with this. Hope you got inspired, and that you will follow me in the next videos. See you later.